Good morning, North Point Church. It's so good to be with all of you today. And, well, I'm not with all of you in person, but all of you that are joining in online, I want to welcome you as well as our Nixa campus and our Dream Center campus. Man, it's great to be here. If you don't know who I am, my name is Torres, and I get to help out here on the team. And we've been in this series called The End of Me. Where basically what we've been doing is we've been taking the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 5, and we've been looking at the first couple of passages or verses, and basically what Jesus is doing is he's giving these 8 statements of what citizenship in the kingdom of heaven looks like. So he's basically taking this world and the values and virtues of this world, and he's kind of flipping them upside down in order to show you what life in another kingdom would look like. Today we're going to look at verse 9. And here's what verse 9 says in Matthew chapter 5. It says this, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Now, there was a lot of people in that audience that day that wish that verse would have read differently. That wish it would have said, "Blessed are the conflict makers," or "the division makers." See, in that audience, they had these people called zealots, and you've heard Jeremy talk about them before, but they believed that through their guerrilla warfare tactics that if they could divide and conquer the Romans, then they might have some peace in their life. And then there were the Pharisees who caused a ton of division because they were always looking down on people, and they thought that they were more spiritual than everybody, and they didn't like anybody. They didn't like Samaritans, they didn't like Romans, they didn't like even other Jews that weren't as pious as they were. And they were constantly causing division. And here's what's funny, is I'm not convinced that I'm any different. Right? Sometimes I don't want peace. If I'm super honest, I like division. I'm okay with it. Sometimes I want war. Now, I might not show you this on the outside, but on the inside, I'm like this savage warrior, like Braveheart, just striping up, and I'm ready to rip. And that's the truth. And here's what I've learned is that sometimes I can become so passionate about my opinions that oftentimes I forget that there's people on the other side. And then division happens. And all of us, well, we're all pretty divided on a lot of things. I know that there's bigger topics right now in the news that are bringing forth some of this division, but we're all divided on things. Let me give you a couple of things, and I need your help, okay? I'm going to ask you a set with 2 questions or 2 things in it, and I just want you to tell me back the answer, okay? We'll do it immediately. The first one, I'll kind of help you out and coach you along with it. But I just want to ask you a few questions, and we're just going to see. I'm assuming that, you're all Chiefs fans, so you're probably all united. You all think the same. You all act the same, that's for sure. But what we'll do is I'm going to give these to you, and then I'll just have you say it back to me. So Dream Center, Nixa, y'all got to help me out too, okay? Let me see how we're divided, okay? First question. Is cheesecake a cake or a pie? Ready, go. Not the same. Let me ask you another one. Who's going to win the Super Bowl? The Green Bay Packers or the Bills? I'm causing a lot of division right now. Neither. How is it pronounced? Is it pronounced GIF or JIF? Okay. Let me pull up a picture. Which one to you best describes toast? Just shout out the number. If I heard a 1 or a 9, let me help you out. 1 is bread, and 9 is cardboard. Toast is somewhere in the middle. All right, here's another one. Yes or no? Does a person flying in the middle seat on an airplane, do they get both armrests? Yes or no? Yes, they do. I'm going to answer that one for you. They do. I am shisty when it comes to it. Like if you're taking one of mine, I'll be like, hey, can you get me some peanuts? And I'll slide it in while they reach. Two more. I'm gonna pull up another picture. Ooh, this is a good one. If you're getting married, consider this premarital counseling. Which way does the toilet paper go? Right or left? Over, under? Okay, I'm going to answer this one for you. The Christian way is over. Okay? Here's what I'll tell you it's not. You don't set it on top like my kids do. Okay? Last question. LeBron James or Michael Jordan? Here's what's funny. These are all silly things, but we're all divided on how we feel about them. And a lot of times, we can become so passionate about our opinions that it's hard to make peace when our opinions are completely one-sided. And this is how it even comes when it comes to peace, right? Even my idea of how peace will come about in life might be different than somebody else's. And it's true. Let me show you. I'm convinced, at least when I first got married, that we would have a peaceful marriage as long as my wife just agreed with me all the time. Right? When I first had kids, I was convinced that we would have a peaceful home because my kids would recognize my reign of power. I mean, you can fill in the blank. These idiots from blank, whatever it is, this party, this denomination, these friends, these people at work, whatever it is, if they just believed like me and lived like me and thought like me and agreed with all my opinions, well, then we would have peace. Or if they don't, at least they could shut up. But what happens when the other side is thinking the same thing? What happens when I'm the idiot? When I'm the one that doesn't view life through the correct lens, and their way is the real way to have peace? Out comes the war paint, and it creates division. And I've seen a little bit of this lately, huh? Let me read you something. I put this in your notes, but I wrote it down like this. You can measure the value that you place on any relationship by the level of discomfort that you're willing to engage to make that relationship the best it can possibly be. Listen, the most fulfilling and productive relationships in my life have one thing in common. It's because I've either initiated or I've endured really difficult and hard conversations and made some adjustments along the way that have helped make that relationship what it is. The best relationships I have in my life are not in spite of difficult or hard or opposing things. It's because of them and how I was able to make peace in them. So let me ask you, when it comes to the harder things in life, harder opinions to get along with, how are we doing this morning? When it comes to your marriage, and whose side of the family are you going to visit for the holidays? Or how are you going to finance and spend your money? How are you going to parent? That can create a lot of division. What about this? Maybe you're a teenager in here, and you see your parents, and you know they're wrong. They are out of touch, and they do not understand life, and they will never get you, and they are wrong. Parents, you look at your children, and you're like, they are out of touch, they don't know what they're doing, and they are wrong. That political party over there, they're wrong. They don't know what they're doing. When it comes to these things, the tension of opposing views actually isn't the issue. What the issue is when I allow a person's opinion to form in me an opinion about that person. That's the real issue. And when I get more focused on my resolution rather than a relationship, then I lose out on the opportunity to have peace. So here's what I'm hoping, is that today we can take this short little verse in Matthew and we can look at it and break it down, and that we can come out of this thing. And if the issue is ours and we need to make peace with somebody, if the issue is ours, we'll own it. We'll take ourselves and we'll reposition ourselves to better handle that relationship. If it's theirs, we'll be able to forgive and coach and realign. Either way, my hope is that we come out better and that we're able to become peacemakers, because Jesus said it's more blessed that way. So let's take a look at verse 9, and let me just give you the word here. He uses a compound word, peacemaker, made up of two words, peace and maker. And here's the word for peace in the Hebrew. It's the word shalom. Now, the word shalom, when they would use this word, what they were saying is, here's what they meant. It was basically like a hello or a goodbye, and it meant basically wholeness, okay? It meant all the prosperity, all of the presence, and all of the peace that would come by being blessed by God. That's what they meant when they said this. Now, when you take these two words and you put them together, you get this Greek verb that basically means to do or to make. To do or to make. It's one that's full of energy and it commands like a lot of action. Notice that Jesus doesn't say, "Blessed are the hope wishers," or the peace wishers, or the peace talkers, or the peace dreamers. He says, "Blessed are the peacemakers." And peace is more, I think we misunderstand it today. Peace is more than just a truce. See, a truce is just throwing in the towel. And that's not the biblical idea of peace. General MacArthur, he actually said this. He said, "A truce just says you don't shoot for a while. Peace comes when the truth is known, the issue is settled, and the parties embrace each other." See, peacemakers, they're not just holding back fire for a little while. They're doing something far more meaningful. They're trying to heal and restore a relationship at any cost. They're putting reconciliation over their resolution. They're putting their relationship over being right. And this is how William Barclay, he translated this verse. He said this. He said, "There are people who produce right relationships in every sphere of life." And here's what I want you to know about this word peace. In the Bible, peace, the word shalom, can never be apart from justice or righteousness. It has to have justice and righteousness. Righteousness is just simply the life that God had intended for you to live. God-like character. And we cannot have peace apart from those two virtues. I mean, think about it. Whenever you have violated those two virtues, when you've lived differently than God's best for your life, or you've done something that was unjust, you probably felt the opposite of peace. Am I right? You might have felt shame. You might have felt guilt. You might have felt angry. You might have felt sad. You might have felt embarrassed. And that's because it was counterintuitive to the wholeness in which God created us to be. I don't know about you, but have you ever called a 1-800 number when you had to like dispute something, or you were upset like with your Wi-Fi service or your Verizon or a phone bill, something? Any of you ever have to make that phone call? Those are the worst phone calls for me. I become a different person. You would not think I follow Jesus if you heard me on those calls. And I know it going into it, and my family knows it going into it. My wife has to remind me I'm a follower of Jesus. My son has told me, "Dad, stop being mean." Because I get on there, and I'm a total phone soldier, man. I get on there, and I mean, I'm brave. I'm making demands. I'm woofing at these people. I'm making all kinds of threats that I'm not going to keep because I'm too lazy to actually go and switch a service. But I'm just on there, and I'm just shredding these people on the other end of the line. And I feel great. I feel like I'm on top of the world. I feel like I am winning the entire time. But then I get off, And a couple of hours later, I don't feel the greatest. Because I've treated somebody unjustly. And to have peace in our lives, we cannot violate these two things. And this is really what the whole series has been about, is how God's kingdom looks differently. And in God's kingdom, living the life that God had intended for you and treating people justly have to go hand in hand. You can't separate them to be whole and to have peace. I don't know if you've ever accidentally stuck a piece of silverware in a microwave. Has anybody ever done that? It probably didn't work well. In my life, whenever I've done this, it's freaked me out. And that's because the fork was never meant to be placed inside of the microwave. And what's funny is the fork isn't the one that actually ends up getting hurt. It's my microwave. And when God has created peace in such a way to be whole, even if we accidentally do it, even if we slide in anger or hatred or passive aggression or bitterness within a relationship, what it does is it ends up hurting us. Because that's not how we were created. We were created to be like Jesus. And Jesus, he was the ultimate peacemaker. So I wrote a couple of things down about Jesus. They're in your notes. I'm going to go over them really quick. But the first thing is this, is Jesus came to establish peace. He came to establish peace. When people in the Old Testament, the prophets, would predict the coming of the Messiah, they didn't call him the soldier or the phone soldier. You know what they called him? They called him the Prince of Peace. And then when Jesus got on the scene, here's the second thing he did. Jesus explained peace. In John chapter 14, he says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. I do not give to you as the world gives to you. Your heart must not be troubled or fearful." See, Jesus' peace did something different. He understood peace to be different than how we would see it. We might see it as just this fuzzy feeling like we're okay. And that's not what he's saying. His peace that he offered us was reconciliation with God and with people. He brought together two opposing parties. Jesus' death, it purchased peace. And then Jesus' resurrection and his presence, it enables peace. The very first thing Jesus said to his disciples after he rose from the grave, in Luke chapter 24, he says, "Shalom. Peace I give to you." Jesus was all about peace. He saw our situation and he didn't shove his head in the sand or turn the other way. He did everything he could to reconcile us and bring peace. And here's what's awesome, is there's another guy in the Bible called the Apostle Paul. And in Romans 12:18, here's what he says. He says, "If it is possible, as far as it pertains to you or depends on you, live at peace with everyone." We're supposed to do the same thing. And I love that he threw the word everyone in there, because that word everyone in the Greek, you know what that means? Everyone. It doesn't just mean the people you like or the people at work that you get along with or the people on the same side of the fence as you or in the same neighborhood as you or that have the same skin tone as you. It says live at peace with everyone. And let me be very clear. This is not a way to get in to the grace of God. That's not what he's saying. He's saying you don't do this to get in. You do it because you belong. You're already there. This is not your ticket out of hell. Jesus is that, following Jesus. He's saying you're going to do this. Basically, what I'm saying is this, is Jesus is going to give you the heart to make peace. And if I'm honest, a lot of us have that same heart. We want peace. The reason why it doesn't exist, maybe if we're going through something, is because we don't have the handles for peace. So I want to give you 4 of those today that are really easy. And they're actually, I'm going to say, they kind of build off one another. So we'll call it the peacemaking process. Because you really got to start at step one. And here's step one. It's talk to God, okay? You've got to be at peace before you attempt to make peace. There's a story in the Old Testament about a guy named Joshua. He was leading the Israelites into a land that God had promised them they would get. And they encountered this city called Jericho. And it was a very well-defended city. The Bible calls it a fortified city because they had built up these ginormous walls. Now Joshua, he does something very strange when he gets there. They're camped out. They're planning on what they're going to do. And Joshua goes and he gets alone. And God comes down and speaks to Joshua, and he gives him this plan. He says, I want you to march around the walls. On the seventh day, blow the horn, sound the trumpets, the siren, all of this stuff. But I'm sure it was very different than what Joshua had in mind. Like, I'm here right now, and you're going to send the marching band around? But Joshua, he takes this message from God, which I'm sure was different than his plan, and he walks it back to his people, and he gives it to his people, and then when they walk it out, guess what happens? Walls came down. Now, here's what I'm saying, is every week, the people that you have opposing opinions with or problems with or people that you don't get along with, in their hearts, they've built up a lot of walls. They've built up a lot of walls through sometimes insecurity, sometimes being hurt, sometimes being offended, sometimes being let down or trauma they've encountered. They've built up a ton of walls around their heart. And I only know this because that's what I do, right? When I'm hurt, I build up walls. But when we can get alone with God, here's what I'm saying is I bet you his plan of how we would treat people might be a little bit different on how we would treat people. And if you get alone with God and you feel like God has told you something different than the verse I just said, chances are that probably didn't come from God. Because blessed are the peacemakers. And if we can get alone with God, we begin to walk it out, we'll see walls come down in our relationships. Second thing is this, is you got to take the first step, okay? Don't wait for it, walk toward it. Jesus said this, he said, so if you are offering your gift on the altar and there you remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar and first go be reconciled with your brother and then come and offer your gift. Man, that verse punched me in the mouth. Jesus loves when I bring a gift of worship and I can come in here and sing corporately. Jesus loves when I bring the gift of serving with my time and my talents. Jesus loves when I come and I bring a financial gift that furthers the church. But you know what he loves more? Is when we're able to go and reconcile first with somebody that helps to restore a relationship. He says, go do that first before you come here. And this is how I read that verse. If Jesus is telling us to do that, and we're waiting on somebody else to make the first move, God's probably waiting on us. He's probably asking us to maybe do this today. Now, the first step can look a lot of different ways. Maybe you could send a letter. Maybe you could send a text or reach out, see if they want to meet up. Lots of different ways to do this. But Paul said, if it is possible. He didn't say it would work all the time. He said, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, you go the extra mile. But that doesn't mean it's going to work. But I promise you will have more peace in your life knowing that you did this. Number 3 is tell them how you feel. Attack the problem and not the person. Jeremy said this last week, but I think it's really good advice. Before we speak to somebody that the relationship has kind of been hurt or been broken, we got to remember Proverbs 15:1, that a gentle answer turns away anger, but a harsh word will stir up wrath. It really will. My son, Paxton, he's 2, and I know I've talked about Hezi a lot, so it's time to throw the other one under the bus. But Hezy's 4, and when Paxton, the 2-year-old, gets mad at Hezy, he does this really hilarious thing. He can't really articulate his emotions yet, and he doesn't really know, really what he's saying, but you know he's mad. So when he gets mad at Hezy, what he does is he takes this wide stance, like this. Already it's hilarious because I can see it in my head. I mean, I might look weird to you, but in my head I can see my 2-year-old. And then I don't know if you remember, there was a game called Street Fighter, and there was this character, a sumo wrestler, his name was E Honda, and he would go, huh, 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 huh. He does this hand swing while he, first he puckers his lips. And then he goes, you are a bad one, Hezy. You are a bad one. And it is the cutest thing. But I bust up laughing every time he does it. Because I'll hear it sometimes and I don't even see it. I'll hear like a crash in the bedroom. And then I'll hear, you are a bad one, Hezy. And it's so funny because it makes absolutely no sense. I know he's trying to communicate something, but it's so emotional and irrational that it's just coming out as pure anger, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. And here's what I thought of when I was thinking about this. I figured out this happens to us a lot of times, that our first response might not be our best response. That sometimes it's more about emotion. And it might not even be the one that makes the most sense in the relationship, and probably because we weren't concerned about it making the most sense, probably we just wanted to make ourselves feel better. But when we do that, we can never be able, if our first response is just an emotional one and we just rip away like my 1-800 numbers, it never gives us an opportunity to consider their situation. And that's really the ticket. We've talked a lot about empathy and things like that, but being able to consider a person's situation is everything. I read a story once about a guy. He was on a subway train, and he was completely just out of touch. He was just staring out the window, and he had a couple of kids, and his kids were acting like crazy. It was Shawn Michaels and the Generation X in the ring, man. They were swinging on the handrails. They were bumping people. They were poking the people's in front of their seats. They were poking their hats. They were yelling. And everybody on the train was completely annoyed. You could see it on everybody's face. The room was just, oh man, they hated this person. They were all thinking it. And finally one man got up and said it. He walked over. He said, "Sir, will you please get a hold of your children? They're acting crazy. If I was their parent, I would have got them under control a long time ago. Will you please do something for the sake of everybody on this train?" And the man looked back at his children, and he looked back at the man, and he said, "You know what? You're right. I'm so sorry. I'm out of it. You see, the boys, we just came from the hospital, and the boys just lost their mother. And I guess I don't really know how to process it either, so I'm kind of just zoning out. But it's not fair to you guys. I should probably do something about that. I'm sorry." I bet you, the man's approach to that situation would have been absolutely different had he understand that man's situation. But we can't ever do that if we don't talk to the person. And we can't let our emotions get in the way of that. Reconciliation is always more crucial than being right. In God's kingdom it is. Number 4 is this, is talk with them and not about them. Be a peacemaker, not the pot stirrer. See, nothing will disqualify us more from being peacemakers than gossip. than just talking about people all the time. There's a Spanish proverb that says, those who gossip to you will gossip about you. And here's what's funny is usually that group of friends that we'll run to and we'll talk about everybody else is usually the same group of friends that will turn around and talk about us. Matthew 18 says, go to that person, right? And that's why we got to get alone with God first. We got to go to that person. But a peacemaker never has to say anything about another person if they've already said it to them. Because what's the point? So here's where we're at today. 4 things that I believe, I don't know where you're at. Maybe you're at step 1 and you need to go and you need to get a heart change on how you view this relationship with this person. Your family member, your parent, your friend, your neighbor, whatever it is. Maybe that's where you're at today. Maybe you got to make Jesus the leader of your life in order to do that. Maybe number 2 is maybe you've had a heart change and you know you need to reconcile that relationship, but you've been waiting and you've been waiting and you've been waiting. Send the text today in the car. Send the text right now. Honestly, it would make me feel better because if you're on your phone, I'm just going to believe and trust that you're doing what I told you to do and not playing games. Send the text right now. Reach out to that person. Maybe we're used to talking about them rather than talking to them, and so we can be around them, and it's peaceful and cordial there, but we know that we don't like them in our hearts. Got to tell them how you feel. Here's what I'm willing to bet. Over 1 billion Christians in this world, here's what I'm willing to bet. If all of the people that followed Jesus did this next week, I bet you the news would look less fascinating. I bet you the world would look more beautiful. I bet your families and your friendships and your marriages would look more beautiful, more blessed, because they would be more whole. Because we would be actively pursuing peace. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to end differently. If I can get the worship team to go ahead and come up at all of our locations, here's what's going to happen is we're going to close, but we're going to do a bit of a different ending. And here's what we're going to do. I want us to all start at step 1 right now, to get with God. Who is that person that you've immediately thought of when I started talking about this? You might have leaned over and told somebody. Who is that person that immediately came to your mind? I want you to get them in your heart, and I want you to talk to God about them. As we sing this song, sing back with us, but let's not fight to be right. Let's fight to reconcile. Because blessed are the peacemakers. So let me go ahead and pray. Jesus, thank you so much that your kingdom calls us to more. That life doesn't have to look the way that it does. Those relationships don't have to look the way that they do. That we could have peace. Help us to pursue that, God. Help us to pursue the wholeness you've created us for, to have good relationship with you and with people. God, we love you. God, I pray that everybody would make that phone call today, would turn to you today, would be honest. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. You can go ahead and stand as we sing.